The story begins when the protagonist, Kim Hyun-sung, is falling from the top of a building, wondering why this is happening to him. He always held on to things and was on the verge of graduation, but things took a different turn. The only thing he was sure about at that moment was that this was the day when he died. 3 months later, he recovers his consciousness and hearing. However, he becomes a vegetative patient. The moment Kim Hyun-sung got his consciousness back, he could hear a relative explaining something to his grandmother. The relative told his grandmother that it was futile to keep believing that he would be out of the vegetative state, as she had never seen a vegetative person restore their senses. After listening to that, the grandmother shouts at the relative for saying such nonsensical things because she has faith and doesn't want to give up on him just yet. A little later, when the relative was gone, his grandmother sat closer to him while holding his hand. She was wondering how all this could have happened to him. Kim Hyun-sung could hear his grandmother clearly, but he couldn't move himself to comfort her. He hoped that he would wake up soon enough. However, inside the dark world, nothing was ever allowed to happen to him. A few days later, his grandmother was still by his side, but she seemed to be sadder than before as the bastards kept telling her to give up on him. It was hard for her to do so because, after Kim Hyun-sung's parents passed away, she was the one who raised him. While crying, she desperately asked him to give her a signal to prove that he's still alive. After endless tries, Kim Hyun-sung couldn't move a single portion of his body. A few days later, he was visited by his younger brother, Hyunjin, who was bruised all over the body. He tells Kim Hyun-sung that he was getting bullied by the same people who bullied him, and he couldn't stand that anymore. He further adds that their grandmother had started to work at a restaurant to earn money for his hospital bills and had injured herself. Hopelessly, he says that only if he died that day, they wouldn't have to go through such hardship. In the end, Hyunjin requests that he stop lying down and wake up. Kim Hyun-sung couldn't even shed a tear. He could neither wake up nor die as he pleased. He gets delusional and starts thinking that if he manages to hold on to the darkness for a little longer, this long dream will be over and he will wake up eventually. 3 years have passed, and Kim Hyun-sung is still in a coma. He realizes that his young brother, Hyunjin, hasn't visited him in a while. A moment later, he overhears the nurses gossiping that his grandmother couldn't visit him anymore and that they could increase the volume of the TV without any problem. After hearing this, he felt the rage boiling inside him as they were taking the situation very lightly. Kim then remembers the faces of all the people who had bullied him during his school days and the teachers who stood idle and acted like they saw nothing. He wished that if some miracle happened and he was sent back to the past, he would surely destroy them all. Rage overrides his mind. He is brainstorming plans to deal with the people who did this to him, making it as brutal as possible. However, he didn't want such simple revenge on them. Kim claims that thoroughly, from the beginning to the end, regardless of any means or method, he will make a plan to destroy them and all of the things those bastards have. Several years have passed. Hyun-sung is still bedridden, and no one visits him anymore. He says that all of those thoughts were absurd and asks anyone to end his life when suddenly he is greeted by himself. He felt relieved and finally opened his eyes. Before he could process anything, he noticed that it was already morning and the place seemed familiar. When he glances at the blackboards, he finally realizes that he is in high school. Kim Hyun-sung thought that all of this was just another dream and proceeded to pinch his cheeks to check whether it was real or not. The pinch hurt, but this was not enough to convince him. He then picks up a pen and stabs it into his thigh to double-check the situation, which inflicted pain on him, and thus he finally realizes that he wasn't actually dreaming and that he is actually going back to the past. Before he could do anything, a bully from his class started beating a kid just to talk back at him. Seeing this, Hyun-sung realized that this was the starting point of all the pain in his past life, and he had to do something about it to not make the same mistake again. He stood up, approached the bully right away, and told him to stop. The bully's attention was now directed towards Hyun-sung. He started to threaten him, telling him that Hyun-sung was not different from the normal students. Without wasting any time, Hyun-sung pulls a punch at the bully's face before he can finish his words. Hyun-sung says that this was the day he had been waiting for the past 10 years in a coma. Here is back to the time when he was a freshman in high school. Before Hyun-sung lands more punches on Park Min-chul, we are brought to the day when his past life changed. He clearly remembers what happened that day. Park Min-chul was a typical bully who harassed his classmates and half-heartedly attended the class while enjoying the Legends online game. That day, Park Min-chul decided to approach Lee Young-min and make him his game shuttle because Lee was already smart and he assumed that he would be very good at games as well. Because of this, the top student, Lee Young-min's grades started to decline. In addition to that, he was told to pour his money into the game to buy items, and the stress got on top of Lee's head. Due to this, he asks Park Min-chul to do it himself. That day, Kim Hyun-sung saw violence occur in front of his eyes for the first time. He didn't want to cause any trouble, but he recalls that Lee Young-min used to help him with his studies now and then. So when he saw Lee getting beaten up by Park, he couldn't see that happening and worked toward Park. A friend asked him not to intervene, but he couldn't convince Kim Hyun-sung. He knew what the friend was talking about, but he was always good at pay and didn't fall behind in the boys' battle for ranking, so he thought that it wouldn't be a big deal for him. He also adds that Park Min-chul wasn't scary to him, so he proceeded to approach Park Min-chul. But the teacher came soon after, and the situation was taken care of responsibly. Ever since that day, Park Min-chul's gang began to harass Kim Hyun-sung like hell. Every day, he was dragged by Park Min-chul's gang and beaten into a pulp without giving a single day to recover. Even after school, there were days when he couldn't sleep because he was forced to run errands for games. There was no other word to describe his situation than hell. Returning to the present, everyone was surprised to see that the class president, Kim Hyun-sung, had landed a punch on Park Min-chul. Even the bully couldn't believe it. So Park turns to look at him, but Hyun-sung suddenly grabs him by his hair and smashes his face on the desk. Blood was all over his face. His classmates couldn't believe that Hyun-sung was like this. He strikes his face again because he had engraved it in his mind over and over again as he fell into a coma. He knew that Park Min-chul was a typical fighter who relied on his physical strength alone, but he was not used to being hit, thus he was bound to collapse once he gave up his first attack. This is why Hyun-sung strikes first. He also calculated that the moment he tries to react after getting punched in the face, he would grab his hair and slam his face right onto the desk, because he had countlessly thought of this for the past 10 years. Even his next move was simulated by him during his time in Coma. He grabs Park Min-chul, pushes him to the wall, and bombards him with kicks. He didn't care if he beat him to death or not. If Michael raised his face, he would kick him in the face. If he tried to move his hands, he would break their hands. Before he can continue beating Park Min-chul, a chair gets thrown at him. However, he easily manages to dodge it. So he turns around to see who threw the chair at him and notices that Park Min-chul's gang members are here to interrupt them. The gang members order Hyun-sung to stop, to which he replies that what could they possibly do if he does not stop. After Young Min-ho heard him say such things, he questioned whether Hyun-sung had gone insane. Kang Chang-sik, who is the strongest in the gang, steps forward and claims to kill Hyun-sung right away. Before anything can begin, a student announces that the teacher is on the way. Thus they decided to back off and leave the classroom. Before leaving, Kang Chang-sik threatens Hyun-sung and tells him that once the class is over, he will surely kill him right away. Now that the class had started, Park Min-chul was raging and was trying to figure out how things could have escalated like this while cursing at Kim Hyun-sung in his mind. He speaks to himself that his guys will be gathering in the classroom after the class ends and will surely take care of Hyun-sung. Park adds that Kim Hyun-sung intervened in many things as a class president, but he always kept the line with him, so he never had to torment him. But now that he has taken the first step, he will surely beat him half to death as soon as the class ends. At the same time, the other gang members are looking at the time and waiting for the class to end to beat the shit out of Kim Hyun-sung. Yoon Min-ho says that he had looked down on the gang, so he tells his mates to use this opportunity to crush him down so that he doesn't look at them with his arrogant eyes anymore. As soon as the class ends and the teacher leaves, Park Min-chul stands up to deal with Hyun-sung. However, Hyun-sung wastes no time and greets him with a kick before he can even process what is going on. As he was falling to the ground, Hyun-sung grabbed his hammered way, stopped him from falling, and told him that they should continue the fighting from where they left off previously. On the other hand, when the class teacher left the classroom, the other gang member left their class to join Park Min-chul. They were shocked after looking at the crowd that surrounded the entrance of Hyun-sung's classroom. Yoon Min-ho realized that something was wrong in the classroom and rushed toward it. After they arrived at the classroom, they were shocked to see that Min-chul's face was beaten up and he was bleeding everywhere. Seeing them arrive at the classroom, Hyun-sung greets them, as he is already waiting for their arrival. After seeing their henchman beaten up like that, Chang-sik rushes towards him. However, he had the plan to deal with Chang-sik prepared already. He says that taking down Park Min-chul was easy, but he couldn't find ways to take care of this guy. "Well, it's simple," says Hyun Sung. "He will just have to fight in a way that his past has never thought of." He picks up a piece of metal and strikes it on Chang-sik's head, which makes him lose consciousness at that very moment. Virtues and righteousness meant nothing to him, and to enact his revenge, he could do whatever he had to. He throws the piece of metal at another bully. Everyone from Park Min-chol's gang was surprised. Before the other bullies got a chance to digest what just happened, Hyun Sung struck again without wasting any time. He tackles Jo Young-taek with all his body weight downwards, which wouldn't let Young-taek endure it. Now, he thrusts him into the floor of the hallway so that he won't be able to respond to the following punches. He wouldn't mind if Jung Min-ho aimed for his back or not, because he just wants to deal with Young-taek first and decrease their number so that he won't get outnumbered. After brutally beating Young-taek, he realizes that his stamina won't follow up with the plans he had made, but there's no way he would stop right there. There was still a person left whom he had to deal with. At the very least, he was someone who could escape the eyes of the top bully. Seeing Kim Hyun Sung in that state, Minho considers Hyun Sung a monster. Minho realizes that he is much stronger than him, and he stands no chance in a fist fight. His hands start to shake as Hyun Sung approaches him. Without a second thought, Hyun Sung launches a punch at Minho's face, but the teacher arrives before he can launch the punch and stops Hyun Sung. Minho thought that Hyun Sung was in great trouble as 3 students were already badly injured, and thus he regained the smile on his face. Hyun Sung is now at the teacher's office. The teacher scolds him and tells him that there are limits to how far he can scuffle with other kids. His true intentions were to put all the blame on Hyun Sung's head and slake off at his work as an advisor. But before he could finish his threats, Hyun Sung calmly told him that there was no reason to make everything so big, because it's not like it's the first act of violence in the school. Hyun Sung mocks him by saying, "Isn't there something you are extremely good at, teacher?" and orders him to cover everything up like he has been doing with the other cases without making it a mess. After hearing this, the teacher slaps Hyun Sung on the face, which was already calculated by Hyun Sung. In his previous life, Hyun Sung didn't just die from the bullying. The blind, bigoted adults who had always been around, just watching him from the sidelines, and didn't do anything were also the reason for his death. He remembers it vividly. How the head teacher of Class 1, Kim Yong-kul, had been living with a teacher's facade. He says that these pieces of Shae-strik's tea shouldn't be considered proper teachers. When the advisor tries to slap him again, Hyun Sung asks the teacher to lower his voice, or he won't be able to stay quiet about the bribe he takes from the parents of the students. Not to mention Yoon Min-ho's parents, who bribed him with a huge sum of money. Aside from this, he said that he had many other things he could talk about. For example, the scandal with the English teacher. When he saw that his words had affected the teacher, he called him the son of the thing and ordered him to keep it down and cover up the whole thing that happened just a few moments ago. In Hyun Sung's previous life, after enduring endless bullying, he finally came to a decision. He knew that it wasn't a good solution, but thinking that he needed the power of an adult, he went to look for the teacher. However, he wasn't much of a help. The teacher right away believed in Park Min-chol's words. Min-chol says that there was no reason for them to bully his friend like that. He further adds that they were just joking around, and since he had quite a big build, Hyun Sung might have thought that they bullied him. And just like that, they ended up settling the matter. After the matter was over, Min-chol and his group took Hyun Sung out of the teacher's room and ordered him to follow them. The terror in Hyun Sung's eyes was visible since he knew what was going to happen to him. A few moments later, Hyun Sung is seen being beaten up badly by Min-chol's group for snitching on them. He's cursing at the teacher for taking the matter so lightly because, as an educator, when a student says that they are getting bullied, a teacher is supposed to take it seriously and investigate the whole thing. As he was getting beaten up, he noticed his teacher at the window and believed that the teacher would stop the beating and take heavy action against the bully. But the teacher turns his face in another direction to act like he has seen nothing. Hyun Sung only found out later that Young-chol was a trash who received money from their parents. Yoon Min-ho's parents were one of his money lines. He had no plans to solve this matter in the first place. After this, he tried his best to solve the matter all by himself. Even when he knew that he couldn't win that fight, he struggled to escape the hell-like reality while swinging his fists. He went too far that particular day. He had broken Min-ho's nose, for which he went as far as calling his parents to school to stand against Hyun Sung. That day, Hyun Sung's grandmother had to bow her head and apologize to them. Hyun Sung describes that the intervention of the adults was an area where he couldn't do anything without his parents. Even on the school violence committee, all the punishment was forced on him alone, and Park Min-chul's gang went through their school life without any problems. Since then, he only realized later, after falling into a coma, that he couldn't take revenge with mere strength. Even the adult's intervention must be completely resolved so that he can take revenge in the true sense of the word. We are now brought back to the present. We could see the teacher's face in shock after what Hyun-sung told him. Kim Young-chul tries to dismiss all the allegations that have been put against him. However, he is cut short before completing his sentence. Hyun-sung threatens the teacher to think carefully before talking to him. Hyun-sung starts blackmailing the teacher by leaking more intel about him to make him believe that he was not bluffing about it. He further adds that the teacher's life was so dirty that even after spilling the dirty deeds he had done, it was not all over. If all the problems are revealed, his life as a teacher will be difficult in the future. He further threatens him and says that if he is still going to act like that, he will trample upon his life, even if he has to make him quit the school. By the time he went up to the 3rd year, Kim Young-chul's private affairs were revealed. His wife came to the school, slapped the teacher in front of everyone, and stamped on the divorce papers. It was later found out that Young-chul's family was well off, and it was also rumored that everything that could be called property belonged to his wife. So he thought that if all of this were true, he was certain that Kim Young-chul feared his affairs being revealed the most. After receiving threats from Hyun-sung, Kim Young-chul finds himself helpless and asks him what he should do. Hyun-sung says that his job was simple. He simply had to keep up with the attitude that he had been living with. Unable to understand the demand, the teacher asked him why he would do such a thing. Hyun-sung tells him to remain an idle observer of the students' affairs and cover them up, even though he knows it is wrong. But the only object that changes is that from now on, Young-chul will be covering things up for Hyun-sung till the time he graduates, and he makes a deal with him that he won't reveal his secrets if he manages to cover things up for him regardless of the means or methods. While leaving the teacher's office, Hyun-sung says that Young-chul was the first card he had thought of in advance, and he must prepare for his next card. But before that, he had something to deal with. In the meantime, Jin Min-ho is throwing a fit in his classroom. He is cursing Hyun-sung for whatever he did previously in the hallway. He thinks that the teacher had already expelled him from the school as he received money from his mother, and thought he would never have to come across Hyun-sung anymore. He throws the chair at a classmate, thinking that he must become the predator of the school, as he doesn't want his status to fall to the ground. After all that tantrum, he sits down in his sayat and starts thinking that it must be a coincidence to take down 3 bastards in one go. Just when he said that he was going to destroy Hyun-sung once he met him, Hyun-sung barged into the classroom in search of Min-ho. Hyun-sung says that he was there to finish off what he had left off earlier. Hyun-sung pulls a punch on him, which makes him fall to the ground. He further bombarded Min-ho with kicks and made it impossible for him to fight back. Being unable to do anything, he pleads in front of Hyun-sung to stop, but he doesn't seem to care about Min-ho's request and keeps on beating him. A little later, he notices the teacher at the window and hopes for his help. However, the teacher turns his head in the other direction, ignoring everything that is happening in the classroom. Hyun-sung pulls him away by grabbing his hair and tells him that no one in the school is ever going to help him. 5 minutes ago, before all this happened, Kim Young-chul was seen trembling in his chair at the teacher's office. He couldn't find a way to cover things up for Hyun-sung. He says that he couldn't cover this case because 3 students were taken to the hospital and were badly injured. The school would want to cover this case, but the parents will go crazy if Hyun-sung is not punished, especially Yoon Min-ho's parents. They won't just sit around if it's related to their son. His parents are affluent people who own several buildings and even provide free school maintenance. Their influence was so strong that the principal was taking care of them himself, and above all, the teacher was receiving money from them as well. In complete shock, Young-chul says that if they began to fuss things out, he wouldn't be able to do anything. After brainstorming for a while, he decides that the only option he is left with is to separate Yoon Min-ho from Hyun-sung so that he won't be able to harm him and possibly stop things from getting out of hand. If he manages to do this, his parents might let this slide. He quickly stands up from his chair and starts to find Hyun-sung, because he thinks that if he succeeds in finding Hyun-sung and asks him not to touch Min-ho, things could get in control. The teacher rushes to Min-ho's classroom, but upon his arrival, he witnesses that Hyun-sung has already beaten Yoon Min-ho into a pulp. Seeing this, he forgets about dealing with Min-ho's parents and says that if his relationship with the English teacher is exposed, it will be all over for him. Back in the present, Hyun-sung was still dealing with Min-ho. He was still outraged. He remembers the time when the people who bullied him during high school looked down on him because he was weak. He's angry after seeing the people who bullied them for years in his previous life tremble like that in front of him. Soon after, he stopped beating Minho anymore, because if he had gone any further he would have ended up killing him. Hyun-sung returns to his sayat and glares at Yoon Minho's pathetic self. He says that he knew that if it was concluded that he didn't touch Yoon Minho, they would have easily covered up the rest of the case. But if he wanted to get revenge by covering up the other people, he wouldn't have slapped Park Min-chul at the very moment he came back to life. He would have avoided these people so he could live his life strife-free. But after experiencing such a hellish life, he built a strong determination to his revenge on them, which resulted in this. He knew that things were about to get noisy soon because he had sent 3 students to the hospital previously, and now Minho as well. The principal, who wanted to make Chinul High School a prestigious school, would try to punish the perpetrator severely. On the contrary, he says that many witnesses must have wanted to cover it up, but they couldn't be stopped even if they wanted to. Hyun-sung says that if Chinul High School couldn't even handle it, he wouldn't even dream about getting revenge. Hyun-sung claims that it was just the beginning of his plan. Moments later, Hyun-sung is summoned to a room where the faculty staff have gathered and are seated across a table. The principal tells him that he wouldn't tolerate such savage crimes in his school. He further asked the teachers whether they had seen the brutally disfigured faces of the children who got assaulted by him, and said that Hyun-sung should be given a heavy punishment for going to such an extent. The faculty agrees with the principal and asked him to punish him as soon as possible. The English teacher, Lee Min-young, also agrees with the principal's decision, but before she can continue her statement, she gets cut short by Yeon-chul, who asked her to stop, because if she didn't want their secret relationship to be exposed to the world, they had to save Hyun-sung from getting expelled at all costs. Yeon-chul proceeds to voice himself and agrees with the principal. However, he also adds that he had observed Park Min-chul and his gang bully the other students in the school, and Hyun-sung was rather a victim who stood up for himself. However, the principal didn't seem convinced and replied that receiving punishment was inevitable for Hyun-sung. The principal had to do this because he had direct connections with Yoon Minho's parents, and he didn't want to anger them by leaving the perpetrator without any punishment. The principal comes to a decision and tells Hyun-sung that a week from now, they will arrange a discussion committee, and they will decide his punishment. Also, Hyun-sung will be suspended from the school until the discussion committee is held. Hyun-sung nods and exits the room. Seeing Hyun-sung leave, Yeon-chul follows him and tries to convince him that he did his best to do whatever he could for him, but he cannot solve the matter anymore. Lastly, he asks Hyun-sung to hold his temper, as he might be able to find a chance to settle the problem if he did so. Hyun-sung finds the teacher a rather interesting person because he used to be someone who looked down on him, but now things have changed, and she calls him a trash person. He planned on taking him in as a card, because he's the kind of person who would do anything for him depending on the situation. Hyun-sung finally speaks up and tells the teacher that he already knew that he had done his best, but he points out the flaw in his statement during the meeting. He knew the truth about Park Min-chul bullying the student from the beginning. Hyun-sung suggests he keep in mind that, until the day he graduates from school, there's only one way to keep his mouth shut. No matter what the result is, the teacher has to do what is best for him. If he fails to do so, then not only he but the English teacher, Lee Min-young, will also suffer great consequences. He further promises that he will keep his word if he manages to cover him up. Deep inside, he wanted to crush Yeon-chul, but that was not his main goal. Just because of his temporary anger, he wouldn't want to get rid of such a useful card. He gets into his classroom and picks up his bag, and while leaving the room, he says that this week will be the time to carry out the plan he had been plotting for years. After that, there will be a drastic change in the current situation, even beyond the principal's expectations.
After storming out of the school campus with his backpack, Kim Hyun-sung is walking in an old alley, wondering about the years of time it has been till date. He describes an old villa with number 00, which is his own 50 million won house. The Sanchin Manison, a housing complex which looked like an old, dilapidated building. If it weren't for Hyun-sung's parents' death insurance, he would have been living on his own monthly salary. He remembered the time his grandmother was forced out of this building, which was her own family house due to his hospital bills, when he had been in a vegetative state. Kim Hyun-sung used to perceive this place as a really shabby one from the time he was a kid. But he is thankful from the bottom of his heart that he at least now has a place that he can come back to. Kim opens the front door, calling out for his grandmother as he searches through the rooms. Finding the living room empty, he recalls her usual work schedule at this hour. He was about to be sentimental but steels himself that it is all for his family and there is no time for such emotions now. He thinks that it is a miracle that he was able to get such opportunity and was dead set about the revenge. He was planning to provide an adobe where his grandmother and Kyunjin could live at ease. He settles down at his desk, recollecting about the deliberation committee meeting scheduled in a week's time. He opens a notebook and pens down his next plan of action. His plan is to devour the surrounding areas and establish the foundation all within 2 years of time, also cleaning up the bases. To complete his plans, he needs to fulfill 3 conditions. The first being his own personal manpower to bring down those school violence perpetrators. Kim needs to have enough strength to face them without getting pushed back. He thinks of certain person and about winning him over, since he cannot train himself to the extent like that person did, which is advantageous for future. The second condition is to gather people with similar purpose as himself, since his opponents are gathering immense manpower. Even with a perfect plan, he doesn't have the power to execute it. He wanted to take the initiative to find people he needs. Finally, the most important third condition, which is manageable since he has prior experience, is to have a background to support his plans so that no one can interfere. At present, the most priority should be given for the third condition to solve the deliberation committee meeting problem. Cut to a scene within a police officer's precinct, where a man is shouting expletives at them. He demands to know if they recognize his identity and his familial association, asserting that they would be spies if unaware of his background. Despite being a citizen of Daesan, he issues threats against the officers. Attempting to calm him by addressing him as an elder, the officers continue to speak, as he is Go Changbom, the 35-year-old eldest son of Myeongjin Construction. In a fit of rage, he kicks a nearby table while continuing to be angry for being called old. One officer at the table recognizes him as a notorious figure in Daesan, realizing the potential consequences of mishandling the situation. Despite their position in the hierarchy, they must adhere strictly to protocol. Seating himself with hesitation, Changbom thinks that this would be better than being nitpicked by the other side. Reflecting on the inevitability of their compliance due to being the first target of his aggression, the officer braces for the repercussions. Changbom is aware that his adversaries will exploit any weakness revealed in this encounter. Recently, his father had announced the commencement of succession race between the brothers for choosing a capable candidate to take over the family business. While his younger brother boasted a prestigious university degree and a marriage to a prominent figure in Daesan, he found himself with only a high school degree. Fearing that his younger brother gets to know his involvement in a violence case, the officer confronts Go Changbyeom that it was his fault he beat them up, also saying that they cannot let this case slide. Changbyeom claims that they were the one to punch him first, to which the officer replies that there is no solid proof, including the absence of a CCTV and the victim's testimony stands tall. Changbyeom thinks of turning the successor race upside down and notices a kid in the precinct. With a wry smile, Kim Hyun-sung reveals that he has come for the testimony to this case and shows the officer a video. Just like Go Changbyeom claims, it was the bystanders who had attacked him first and were persistently stopping him when he was just passing quietly. When questioned about the source of the video, Changbyeom reveals that he personally witnessed the incident and retrieved the footage from a nearby parked car's black box, given the absence of surveillance cameras in the vicinity, emphasizing the credibility of a minor's testimony and his own efforts to avoid conflict. Changbyeom acknowledges the officer's assessment. Having a witness and evidence, he feels reassured of his safety. Understanding the situation, the officer concludes the investigation and plans to schedule a meeting once the assailants receive medical attention. The officer also apologizes for his impartiality after watching the assailant's condition. However, Changbyeom's response is with a resolve to remember the officer's face and to look forward for his peaceful life soon after. After coming out, Changbyeom praises Hyun-sung for saving him and praises himself of a person not to forget one's favor. Impressed by Hyun-sung's acceptance of the monetary gesture without hesitation, Changbyeom admires him as an extraordinary person. Intrigued by Hyun-sung's sudden inquiry regarding the incident's accidental nature, he tried to find the motive, to which Kim frankly says that he knows the kind of person he is and about the successor's race. When asked about his identity, Kim thought that this incident is not accidental and he might have a proof to verify that too. Kim recalls about their life from when he was in hospital. He asks about his thought on the claim and to give him an hour to get into if he is that much thankful to him. He promises that it will not cause harm to his life. In a cafe setting, Kim Hyun-sung presents the original black box video to Go Changbyum, omitting the first half of the video since the later half would prove that his actions were of self-defense. Hyun-sung explains that the first part of the video was what happened to Go Changbyum, definite enough to prove that it was a coincidence. However, 30 minutes earlier, the trio appeared at the store, behaving like regular customers until Go Changbyum's arrival, at which point they instigated a confrontation. Their behavior seemed deliberate, almost as if they sought to provoke him through any means possible. Despite Changbyum's efforts to remain composed, he ultimately initiated the fight. With visible frustration, Changbyum slams his coffee mug on the table. Hyun-sung suggests Changbyum may have caught a pattern in recent incidents, which started once the successor's race commenced. He places blame on Go Chang-sik for orchestrating events either accidentally or intentionally to undermine Changbyum. Facing a dilemma, Changbyum acknowledges feeling suspicious, but hesitates to cast doubt on his younger brother. Changbyum questions Hyun-sung about his remarks, prompting a recollection of his memory about Myung-jin constructions. They would succeed in apartment branding with their innovative technology and solid capital, thanks to the chairman Go Myung-jin's philosophy. This philosophy is a hands-off approach on people's homes, which resulted in reduction of margin and increased completion rate, elevating their status to larger firms, but lost both sons in that process. The trouble began with Go Chang-suk, whose actions caused a significant incident in Daesan. Chang-suk's ambitions for succession drove him to engage in questionable activities, ultimately uncovered by his older brother. In a fit of anger, Changbyum struck Chang-suk, resulting in permanent disability and sparking outrage when the chairman declared both sons incompetent. Memes circulating about their activities led Hyun-sung to locate the scene of the incident through his recollections. Chairman hired a professional manager after that, which led to the rise to the ranks of conglomerates. Following this incident, the chairman hired a professional manager, rising its status into conglomerate level. Hyun-sung resolves that the company's future must remain unchanged, deeming both sons unfit. The elder's short-tempered nature and the younger's willingness to sacrifice morality for success hold little importance to him beyond their usefulness. Prioritizing revenge and his family's well-being, Hyun-sung disregards the repercussions of his decisions, focusing solely on his objectives. Hyun-sung extends his offer of assistance, proposing a plan for revenge against his brother and positioning Changbyum as the chairman. Changbyum dismisses the suggestion, highlighting his status as a high schooler. Hyun-sung counters, saying that others who offered assistance merely offered flattery and questioning how a mere high school student could unravel such a plot. He goes on to say that those people are Chang-suk's informants. He tells him not to believe him right away, instead provide him a chance to prove himself. Changbyum exits the shop to light a cigarette and clear his head. Reflecting on Changbyum's past, Hyun-sung acknowledges his reputation as the hot-headed ticking bomb of Daesan, having lived recklessly as the eldest son. It is for this reason to approach who would destroy his brother for the sake of power. Conversely, Changbyum thinks that the kid isn't wrong and he doesn't have anything when compared to his brother, which is obvious for him to succeed. However, he thinks if it is better to believe a 17-year-old whom he met in the first time. Recalling his father's advice to value skill over factors like age or gender, Changbyum resolves to return to the cafe, insisting that Hyun-sung inform him of his plans beforehand, allowing him to make an informed decision. In his office, Chang-suk engages in a heated conversation with an informant, resulting in him smashing his phone to the ground in frustration, questioning the difficulty of the task at hand. He justifies his actions as his father's traditional view that the eldest son should inherit, even in modern times. Regaining composure, he strategizes to maintain control, confident that if no disruptions occur, the position will naturally fall to him as the elder brother. Suddenly, the phone rings and upon answering, he receives news of a significant development, a breach at the Hansung officetel by an individual referred to as Ma'am. Hyun-sung explains the current situation, which is to win this succession race, he needs to be aware that between the brothers, the younger suits to be the chairman since he studied business at a prestigious university and married to a prestigious family. He later instigated that those who were recruited by him should decide the successor fairly, which led to the formation of an official succession structure. Go Chang-suk has prepared a lot for this and is not coincidence. As a result, he has created an advantageous position for him to steal his brother's position. Hyun-sung also emphasizes the lack of advantage over him, except for his seniority. Despite having many cases and setbacks, Hyun-sung maintains that Chang-byum might prevail. He clarifies his chances of winning by the naive thought of the eldest son would prevail in leading even though his younger sibling has clear advantage. The difference has grown that a competition isn't necessary and Chairman Go has to select a successor yet. Hyun-sung asserts that until both brothers are on equal footing, the true competition has yet to commence, emphasizing the significance of the eldest son status when equilibrium is achieved. Meanwhile, Chang-suk arrives at a scene, visibly winded and drenched in sweat, where he encounters a woman cradling another woman whose face bears evident signs of bruising. Chang-byum faces 3 conditions to win the successor competition. Firstly, there's background, which he lost from the start as he was socializing with friends, while his younger brother secured support by marrying into a prestigious family. Secondly, his reputation is already tarnished. Thirdly, there's ability, which Chang-suk gained while Chang-byum was occupied with social activities. Chang-byum acknowledges that Chang-suk had an advantage with an easier competition due to his abilities. Hyun-sung states they will address these conditions to turn the tide. They begin with the background aspect, acknowledging it's challenging to achieve quickly since Chang-byum cannot marry into a prestigious family. To counter this, they plan to prompt Chang-suk's divorce, aiming to gain an advantage and reset Chang-suk's progress back to square one. Cut to the present. Both brothers stand before their father in his office. Chang-suk apologizes for the issue. His father screams at him, revealing he had to plead to his father-in-law to prevent a divorce. Their father informs about the decision made by his in-laws. Chang-suk's wife will live separately, and forgiveness depends on his sincerity. He warns Chang-suk that such behavior risks his marriage. He suggests Chang-suk should have remained single like Chang-byum if he wished to continue this way. Turning to Chang-byum, their father questions his visits to police stations, expecting his usual denial of facts. During the planned discussion, Chang-byum stands up, approving his strategy. He emphasizes that his task is to uncover and snitch Chang-suk's dirty secrets to their father, tarnishing his reputation and disqualifying him from leadership. As he prepares to conclude, he anticipates his father's annoyance in the end, but Hyun-sung interjects, disapproving the idea. Recalling memories of his vegetative state, he remembers his father's awareness of their actions and tolerance for such methods. According to their father's standards, the successor must demonstrate potential to lead the company, while ignoring personal history and tactics. Therefore, exposing Chang-suk's personal flaws would be futile, and they would repeat past mistakes. Instead, they should focus on demonstrating behaviors befitting a chairman, portraying a different, more suitable side of themselves. Revert to the present, where Chang-byum offers a sincere apology, pledging not to repeat his actions to his father. He takes full responsibility as the eldest son of Myeongjin Constructions, vowing to handle any ensuing trouble. Bowing respectfully, he promises to teach a lesson to Chang-suk on behalf of their father. In response, their father acknowledges his efforts, recognizing his attempts to avoid conflict, and expresses pride in his handling of the situation, having heard from it. Exiting the office, Chang-byum beams with happiness at his father's rare acknowledgement and encouragement and repeats the praises. Meanwhile, Chang-suk glares angrily at him, vowing retaliation against whoever leaked the address. Trembling with joy, Chang-byum hopes for more of his father's recognition and encouragement for more such moments. Later, Chang-byum and Hyun-sung sit in the car, contemplating Chang-byum's path to becoming the next chairman. Hyun-sung advises him not to become overly excited, noting that Chang-suk's advantage lies only in their background similarity. To succeed, Chang-byum must fulfill the remaining conditions. He suggests starting by working in the company to learn the ropes, surprising Chongbyum, who quickly agrees. Hyun-sung promises to guide him further when the time is right. However, Hyun-sung hints at other matters to attend to, pointing towards an agreement between them. When Chongbyum inquires further, Hyun-sung gets straight to the point, outlining his requests in exchange for assistance. Chongbyum agrees, curious about Hyun-sung's aid. On the day of the deliberation committee hearing, Miho's mother, Kim Sunja, is witnessed slapping his homeroom teacher for refusing to speak against Kim Hyun-sung. She insists that the money spent on him was in vain and threatens his job unless he ensures the expulsion of the student who harmed her son. Recollecting a prior horrifying encounter with Kim Hyun-sung, the teacher recalls being warned that if Kim Hyun-sung faces consequences, he will too. The teacher realizes the gravity of the situation and the need to make a careful choice to safeguard his own well-being. As the teacher enters the room, he observes the principal and Kim Sunja engaged in whispered conversation. Taking his seat on the bench, he trembles with fear, knowing that regardless of his choice, he stands to lose his job. Casting a glance at Kim Hyun-sung, who exudes confidence, only adds to his unease. The headmaster initiates the discussion, tasking Mr. Kim, the homeroom teacher, with providing insight into the events. Suddenly, the homeroom teacher rises, attributing the incident to Jong Miho and other students involved in bullying. He contends that the victim has been unjustly accused, portraying the situation as a miscarriage of justice. At the onset of the meeting, the teacher identifies the individual seated next to Kim Hyun-sung as a guardian. Prompted by this recognition, he swiftly reaches his phone for further details and discovers that he is the eldest son of Myung-jin Constructions. Initially, he had anticipated the presence of someone with a similar name, leading to a confusion. Reflecting on Go Chongbyum's stature compared to Young Miho's parents, the teacher questions the reality behind his guardianship. However, he sets aside these thoughts and contemplates the newfound opportunity for survival. Recognizing the unfamiliarity of Go Chongbyum to those present, he alters his course of action, portraying the incident in a different light where the roles of victims and perpetrators are reversed. Upon hearing the teacher's remarks, the headmaster requests clarification on the events to prevent further misunderstandings. The teacher asserts having received multiple reports regarding the misconduct of 4 students, referred to as Park Min-cheol's gang, who had engaged in bullying since the beginning of the semester. Despite warnings against causing trouble, their behavior escalated over time. The teacher then recounts the actual events of the incident, wherein Park Min-cheol was bullying a classmate and Hyun-sung attempted to intervene to stop the bullying. Subsequently, Park enlisted some friends to intimidate Hyun-sung. Emphasizing the right to self-defense in the face of provocation, the teacher highlights Hyun-sung's actions as defensive when confronted with a gang assault initiated by Young Miho, the informant of the gang. Hyun-sung's defensive response, the teacher argues, was compelled by the need to avoid further harm. Acknowledging that the defense may have been forceful, the teacher contends that singling out Kim Hyun-sung for punishment while disregarding the actions of the other 4 students would reflect poorly on the adults, to condoning school violence. Once the teacher concludes his argument, the principal interjects, asserting that the teacher is diverting from the main issue at hand. He emphasizes that the purpose of the meeting is to address a grave incident that resulted in 4 students being hospitalized, a first in the school's history. Furthermore, the principal underscores that the victims are distinct from the perpetrators, emphasizing that violence can never be justified under any circumstances. He maintains that he has not encountered any prior instances of such severe violence perpetrated by them. Initiating his act, the principal reminds everyone present that they are all members of the Kinil community and expresses deep anguish over the need to judge between right and wrong. He stresses the importance of administering appropriate punishment to ensure such incidents do not recur, aiming to provide reassurance to the parents and facilitate their return home. Urging for clarity, he requests Young Miho's account of the incident, as he believes the victim's testimony holds significant weight. With a trembling voice, he asserts that Young Miho's version of events differs starkly from the teacher's narrative. According to Young Miho, he witnessed Kim Hyun-sung assaulting Park Min-cheol in classroom 1. After investigating with peers, he learned that Hyun-sung suddenly initiated the attack without provocation. Young Miho contends that Hyun-sung instigated the assault, prompting Mincheol to seek help from friends. Despite feeling threatened, Hyun-sung resorted to violence by grabbing a lock and striking Mincheol. Young Miho emphasizes the distressing sight of Mincheol's injuries, diverting attention away from Hyun-sung's actions. Perplexed by the teacher's inclination to blame the victims, Young Miho recounts an earlier altercation wherein Hyun-sung was disciplined and subsequently retaliated against him in front of witnesses. Overcome with emotion, Young Miho questions his culpability in the matter. His mother intervenes, drawing focus to her son's battered face, and vehemently denounces the senselessness of such violence within the school. She implores the parents to ensure accountability for the perpetrator, prompting murmurs of agreement among the audience. In the hospital scene, the three students injured by Hyun-sung engage in a discussion about the impending trial, with a particular focus on the temperament of Miho's mother. Recognizing her potential to turn the school upside down if provoked, they anticipate her full support for Miho. One of the students expresses a determination not to leave Hyun-sung alone even if he is expelled from school, vowing to relentlessly torment him until he pleads for mercy. Another student proposes a plan to pursue Hyun-sung relentlessly until reaching a settlement, with an intent to extract compensation for the harm inflicted. They collectively agree to share any settlement obtained, settling on the idea of extracting a few $100s from Hyun-sung per person. In the scene at school, Changbyum expresses his frustration by hitting the bench and denouncing the situation as absurd. He confronts everyone, questioning whether they are pretending to know or not about Miho, who is a demon wearing human skin, might have started this. When the principal interjects, objecting to the characterization of Miho as a demon, Changbyum responds angrily, insisting on the nature of the term. He reveals that he has conducted a background check on Miho's group, highlighting their history of assault, theft, and extortion, suggesting that their notoriety should be common knowledge. He wonders the community be lacking in comprehension or either getting money from them. He asserts that the gang members' injuries and the subsequent arrival of ambulances were a consequence of Hyun-sung's attempts to defend himself. Emphasizing the homeroom teacher's admonition to focus on the true nature of the incident, Changbyum poses a frank question. If they were bullied by thugs during their own school days, would they have remained passive? His mother was in shock for calling her son a thug, and she questions his importance here since Kim has no parents. In a previous scene within his car, Kim approaches Changbyum with a proposition to become his sponsor. Changbyum suggests that Kim could directly ask for money, but Kim clarifies that he seeks Changbyum's support not merely for financial gain, but for the endeavors he plans for the future. Kim explains that to confront adversaries with substantial resources, he himself must amass power, which he can only achieve by aligning with Changbyum. He admits his intention to cause significant disruptions at school, far beyond typical scuffles, and expresses a desire for Changbyum to serve as his backup and problem solver, particularly as the issues may escalate to legal matters. Kim assures Changbyum that if he faithfully assumes the role of guardian, no one in Daesan will be able to touch him, and he pledges to leverage any means necessary to elevate Changbyum to the chairman's position. Changbyum reassures Kim not to worry about such matters, emphasizing his expertise in exuding authority and urging Kim to trust him to handle any challenges, including physical or other troublesome situations. Returning to the scene at the school meeting, Changbyum responds to the inquiry posed by Miho's mother by declaring himself as Kim Hyun-sung's sponsor. He emphatically places his business card on the desk, announcing his identity as the eldest son of Myung-jin Constructions. Changbyum goes on to state that Hyun-sung is a beloved younger brother of his, and is not the type to go and cause trouble around. He heard about a deliberation committee meet and came running while putting aside all his work. He hoped that Hyun-sung would attend this prestigious school without any trouble and was planning to sponsor the school in the company's name. He reverted his thought since this school is rotten and poorly managed. When Miho's mother claims that he is threatening, he replies harshly that he is stating the facts about an educator's actions. He states that they are supposed to instill righteous and values into students, and if that's the case, why Hyun-sung is the one being punished for fighting back at the bullies and saving a classmate. He states that the adults are ignoring the years of bullying and punishing him for retaliating a bit violently for the first time. He questions their presence when all of this is happening. He questioned Kianil for turning a blind eye to his bullying in the past. He further states that, If the reason for the punishment of him being poor and for the money received from the parents of the bullies, then he won't let this event aside and will do anything to turn upside down for being Daesan's prestigious school. He threatens that he will make sure no one will ever step foot in Daesan ever again, to all the bullies and those in support to Miho. He claims that this is the essence of true justice. The principal is seen sweating and talking to himself, wondering the status of Kim Hyun-sung's guardian being the eldest son of Myung-jin Construction. He thinks of taking Hyun-sung's side since he won't be able to get to the side of Myung-jin Construction and would probably thrown out of Daesan City for going against them. He thinks of the repercussions of taking Young Miho's side. He thinks of taking this chance to get on the good side of Myung-jin's Construction and get them sponsor the school, which would result in Kienil High being the best school in the whole country. The headmaster only thinking about the future of the school and won't care if he is called a traitor and hit with rocks. The headmaster claims to have heard about the bullying group form the start and corrects himself if it is Young Miho as the ringleader. He states that he is just stating the facts as laid out and not to pass the blame onto someone else. He iterates the committee hearing is a place of judgment made solely on going over facts. He claims Hyun-sung being one of the brightest students and must have a good reason for doing what is done. He asks about the view of Hyun-sung. Kim Hyun-sung starts thinking about the situation and finally getting a chance to speak now, since he never had anyone to back him up previously. He thinks if someone has asked him previously, he wouldn't die in such a manner. He starts speaking that he has informed many teachers about the gang, only to hear the same statements that they are not those kinds of kids to do something like that, be a man to solve it, and if he is sure that they were not playing around. He claims none of the teachers looked into the roots of the matter and always brushed it aside, also providing confidence to do worse things without getting unnoticed. He agrees on hitting Young Miho and sending the others to ER. He questions for his presence here just because he hit them once and went too far, or due to the adults' thought that they were powerless. He says that even if he fell from the rooftop and with no power, the truth would be buried. He further claims to spread the word on the happenings in the school if the perpetrators are not punished for their sins and deeds. This will make everyone know the reality and making Kienil a disgrace. He claims that the only way to close his mouth is by definitive punishment. Young Miho's mother screams that she won't allow her son to be punished and is going to call her husband. With her husband on the phone, she claims that the committee is framing Miho to be at fault by everyone who is present in the room just because the sponsor is the eldest son of Myung-jin Construction. When she asks in how much time will he arrive, the husband clarifies about his name. She jokingly asks if he knew him and orders him to arrive faster. He threatens her for the behavior towards the eldest son and questions if she wanted to see the family destroyed. He orders her to return home and let Miho get all the punishment. She was completely shocked. Later that night, Hyun-sung is lying on the floor, recollecting the punishments, which are 100 hours of volunteer work and expelling the perpetrators. In the corridor, Kim calls Miho, to which he starts to swing his arm. He was stopped by his mother. Kim orders him to get down on the knees and beg, to which he was flustered and questions the need to kneel if he was expelled. He replies that he should consult his mother to kneel or not. Hyun-sung whispers to Miho to try his best soothing him. Her mother orders Miho to kneel, to which he abides. He whispers that this doesn't make him any better and he should start praying since his future from now on will be filled with only misery, with an evil smirk on his face. Finally, he is one step closer to the one who is the mastermind and pushed him to death from the top floors. Kim Hyun-sung arrived at the park as requested by Park Min-cheol. Hyun-sung urged Min-cheol to speak straight to the point. Min-cheol began by taking responsibility for his past bullying, acknowledging the pain it caused. Having accepted the deliberation committee's decision and having spent a week in the hospital, he vowed to refrain from such behavior in the future. He mentioned that, according to the teacher, Hyun-sung's agreement might prevent their expulsion. Min-cheol explained that Young Miho's behavior stemmed from his upbringing, an aspect they couldn't change. Aware that expulsion would severely impact their lives, Min-cheol pleaded for a chance, proposing to assist Hyun-sung with tasks and even offering to provide financial support. Hyun-sung weighed the consequences, considering their limited options in the small Daesan area, especially if expelled for school violence. Min-cheol hinted that they were pressured into bullying Hyun-sung by someone else, fearing repercussions if they spoke up. As he prepared to disclose the instigator's identity, Hyun-sung interjected, claiming he already knew. During his coma, another bullied student took his own life by jumping from the rooftop, leaving behind a suicide note that unveiled the truth. It exposed the existence of an organization called the Golden Circle, focused on prestigious Gangnam schools, with its core members shrouded in secrecy. The founder of this organization capitalized on school violence, seeing it as a financial opportunity. He targeted students with influential parents, recruiting bullies to provide protection and ensure academic success by eliminating top-performing students whenever necessary. Although the identities of the core members remained elusive in Hyun-sung's time, the outline of their operations eventually surfaced. However, the case was swiftly buried. The true extent of the organization's reach and its members remained undisclosed until the very end. To seek justice and closure, Hyun-sung must uncover the Golden Circle's secrets and dismantle their operations. Hyun-sung revealed to Min-cheol that the Golden Circle, based in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do, held power over their current location. When asked about the mastermind behind his recruitment, he paused before identifying Shin Youngmin Sunbae, a third-year bully who commanded authority throughout the school. Though Hyun-sung couldn't definitively link Shin to the Golden Circle, their method of using intermediaries suggested his involvement. Acknowledging Shin's physical prowess akin to a professional MMA athlete, Hyun-sung recognized the challenge in extracting information from him. Prioritizing Min-cheol, he confronted him, questioning if he sought forgiveness. With layers of resentment piled up since his coma, Hyun-sung harbored no intentions of absolution or repentance. With a vengeful glare, he vowed that any future encounters would entail dire consequences, punctuating his declaration with a swift blow. Amidst striking Min-cheol, Hyun-sung pondered on his unawareness of Min-cheol's fatherhood, a sentiment shared by the other three. The irony of their seemingly untroubled lives fueled Hyun-sung's determination to ensure they endured lifelong trauma as retribution, intensifying his assault. In the classroom, whispers filled the air as students exchanged gossip about the day's events and Hyun-sung's perceived transformation into a villain. One student remarked that those who appeared harmless often harbored the darkest intentions, particularly when provoked, their rage unchecked and unpredictable. Unaware of Hyun-sung's presence, the discussion continued until he entered the room and took his seat. Approaching him, the classmate whom Hyun-sung had saved expressed gratitude for the expulsion of the entire gang and offered assistance, urging him not to hesitate to ask for help. Hyun-sung's response was terse, his pause with tension, as he recalled the offer, stating he didn't require aid from someone who remained passive during the hearing. He questioned the classmate's reluctance to testify and his current motivations. With a steely gaze, Hyun-sung declared his least interest to the consequences he might face and expressed his desire to no longer see his presence. On the rooftop of the school, a student inquiries about their next move now that the expulsion of the four has thwarted their plans. Shin, tossing aside his cigarette, reveals that they targeted Hyun-sung without realizing he had powerful backing, the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction. He emphasizes that no one in Daesan can touch them, given their association with such a formidable entity. When questioned about abandoning their schemes, Shin dismisses the idea, suggesting that the current situation presents an opportunity to extract a hefty sum by targeting a single high schooler. He instructs the other student to fetch the freshman class president to the rooftop. During class, Hyun-sung thinks the necessity of excelling academically to draw the attention of the Golden Circle, thus avenging himself. He reflects on how Min-cheol and his gang target him due to his past academic achievements, likely making him a threat to someone within the school hierarchy, potentially the true instigator. Though he has some suspicions about several individuals, he acknowledges the importance of gathering concrete evidence before taking action. Recognizing the need to prepare for future challenges, Hyun-sung heads towards a training center after school, accompanied by Young Do-cheol, a former MMA fighter and UFL champion. Anticipating a rundown establishment, he enters the premises, greeted by a person inquiring about registration. Confirming his intent to fight, Hyun-sung senses that this serves as another missing piece in his puzzle. The head of the first-year students, Park Jin-woo, appeared in front of the third-year students. They praised his physique and mentioned that they had thought he used to be an errand boy. Shin asked him for a favor, to incapacitate Kim Hyun-sung so severely that he could never behave like a normal person again. Meanwhile, Kim Hyun-sung interacted with Young Do-cheol. Young Do-cheol remarked that Hyun-sung seemed to be a high school student and had come to the right place. He explained the activities at the gym, including diet improvement, and took pride in satisfying customers completely. He mentioned that he would be teaching as a personal trainer for a monthly fee of 150,000 won. Young Do-cheol was hard to recognize because of his mustache, but Hyun-sung was certain he was the previous champion of the UFL. When asked about his motivation for joining the gym, Hyun-sung replied that he wanted to trample the bullies he encountered. After a slight pause, Young Do-cheol suggested that the gym was not a place to learn fighting. He added that if Hyun-sung wanted to join just to beat someone up, he would not approve his registration. Instead, he advised Hyun-sung to build up his body to escape bullying and to strengthen himself. Hyun-sung recalled the fame of the first Korean UFL champion. Despite being able to live solely on his fame, the champion was content with running a small gym in the countryside. His career ended after being detected with anabolic substances during a doping test in his third title defense battle. He admitted his mistakes without any excuses. However, what interested Hyun-sung was the champion's other talent, his training methods which had turned a third-rate fighter into South Korea's best athlete. Hyun-sung thought that if he could appease this man, he would definitely be able to lay the foundation for his own strength. Hyun-sung mentioned that he used every possible method to win against his opponents during his time as an athlete. He asked Do-cheol what was wrong with doing anything to achieve one's goals. Young Do-cheol responded that he had been foolish for doing so and would not repeat the same mistake if he could turn back time. He constantly regretted his decision. He told Hyun-sung that he wouldn't end up in a bad situation like his if he didn't make the same foolish choices and learn from his results. Do-cheol further stated that he wouldn't accept Hyun-sung into the gym and warned that if Hyun-sung intended to join just to beat people up, he would probably end up in prison. Hyun-sung suddenly claimed that he could provide 100 million won within a day if Do-cheol agreed to teach him. He emphasized his need for money, offering to pay the entire amount as a down payment to ensure that Do-cheol would incur no loss if he decided to quit midway. Hyun-sung stated that he had predicted all possible outcomes and still chose to use drugs, fully aware that the result was a consequence of his own decisions. He acknowledged that his choices now might lead to severe repercussions, such as becoming a cripple or ending up in a youth detention center, but he was prepared for those possibilities. He compared his current desperation to Young Do-cheol's desperation in using drugs. Listening to Hyun-sung's determination, Young Do-cheol expressed that he could never again resort to using drugs and could not allow a young person like Hyun-sung to follow the same destructive path. He agreed to help Hyun-sung but insisted on one condition. Do-cheol asked Hyun-sung to get into the ring and stated that if Hyun-sung could last one round against him, he would acknowledge his willpower and accept the offer. That night, Hyun-sung returned home with numerous bruises, and his grandmother reacted as he had anticipated. He assured her that everything was all right while recalling some phrases from his evening with Young Do-cheol. Meanwhile, Young Do-cheol, seen drinking and looking at a text in his phone to reject a proposal. Flashbacks to the ring show Do-cheol advising Hyun-sung to reconsider, warning that he wasn't joking around. Do-cheol explained that he had encountered many types of people in sports, but once in the ring, objectives didn't matter. He mentioned that confident kids who thought they knew how to fight often begged for mercy after taking a few shots to the chin. Do-cheol laid out the rules. One round would last 3 minutes with no ground fighting. If Hyun-sung could prove himself unbreakable and last the round, Do-cheol would train him to be the best. Hyun-sung agreed to try, and Do-cheol advised him to put his guard up. Young Do-cheol observed that despite Hyun-sung's flimsy stance, he was not showing any fear. Do-cheol planned to gauge any change in Hyun-sung's demeanor once he got hit. He started to land his first punch, which Hyun-sung blocked, but then Do-cheol followed up with a second punch, sending Hyun-sung flying to the edge of the octagon. Do-cheol then remarked that only 10 seconds had passed. Hyun-sung maintains his position against a relentless punch from Do-cheol, his nose bloodied and his stamina drained. He fears that even a single blow, delivered with Do-cheol's formidable power and speed, could render him unconscious. Abruptly, the punches cease, causing him to momentarily drop his guard. only to be caught off balance by a sharp side kick to his knees from Du Cheol, sending him crashing to the ground. Despite the pain coursing through him, Hyun Sung struggles to rise, trembling with effort. Through gritted teeth, he defiantly asserts that his 3 minutes are not yet up. Hyun Sung persists in deflecting Du Cheol's punches, aware that his stamina is dwindling rapidly under the sustained assault. Desperate to turn the tide, he gathers momentum for a counterattack, only to be met with a punishing uppercut from Du Cheol. Blood spurts from his mouth and nose as he collapses to the ground. Meanwhile, Du Cheol reflects that Hyun Sung has endured longer than he expected, despite it being just over a minute. He admits to himself that he's been holding back, allowing Hyun Sung's wounds to heal quickly. However, he realizes this is merely an excuse and refuses to compromise his self-respect by going easy on someone who can't endure the challenge. Just as Du Cheol contemplates ending the fight, Hyun Sung defiantly rises from the ground, declaring that it's not yet over and demanding to continue. With determination gleaming in his eyes, Du Cheol resolves that he cannot afford to show any mercy. He must crush Hyun Sung completely before crossing any boundaries. Du Cheol emphasizes that his leniency ends now, and he won't hold back any longer. Hyun Sung, anticipating a follow-up kick after Du Cheol halts his punches, prepares to defend himself. However, he is caught off guard by a powerful punch to his stomach from an unexpected angle. The impact is so severe that even seasoned professionals would struggle to recover quickly. With just 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining, Du Cheol sets a deadline. If Hyun Sung doesn't rise within the next 15 seconds, he will deem the fight over. As Hyun Sung struggles to stand, his body betrays him, refusing to cooperate. With a desperate cry, he fights against his own limitations, driven by the burning desire for revenge. Memories flood his mind, reminding him of the time spent in a coma, where he pleaded to God to rewind the time. Disgust wells up within him at his current weakness, unable to withstand even a single blow despite his long prayers for the opportunity to seek vengeance. His inner voice screams at him to rise, warning him of the consequences of failure. Fueled by his determination to settle the score, Hyun Sung is willing to plunge into darkness if it means achieving his goal. He refuses to fall without tearing his enemies to shreds, his resolve unyielding. Du Cheol reflects on the path his life has taken and the potential consequences of allowing someone like Hyun Sung to become powerful enough to challenge him. He can't bear the thought of Hyun Sung living a life filled with the same regrets that haunt him. Determined to intervene, Du Cheol resumes his barrage of punches, fully prepared to endure the consequences, even if it means breaking Hyun Sung's nose or knocking out his teeth. After a prolonged struggle, Du Cheol manages to push Hyun Sung towards the edge of the ring, poised to strike him once more as the timer reaches its conclusion. Acknowledging Hyun Sung's endurance, Du Cheol notes the late hour and the closure of nearby hospitals. He implores Hyun Sung to keep their encounter confidential before exiting the ring. As he leaves, he invites Hyun Sung to join him to retrieve his bank account numbers. A broker from a newly established fighting group approaches Du Cheol with an offer to use performance-enhancing drugs and participate in matches for entertainment purposes. They promise generous compensation in return. Checking his account balance, Du Cheol contemplates the offer, acknowledging that without the 100 million won already in his possession, he might have been tempted to accept. Ultimately, Du Cheol decides against the offer. He sends a text to the broker, reminding him to pretend that the offer was never made. Over a meal, Hyun Sung reassures his grandmother that the bruises on his body are merely the result of a minor disagreement with classmates, assuring her that the issue will soon be resolved. Curious about a subscription account, Hyun Sung learns from his grandmother that she has been depositing 100,000 won every month for the past decade. Encouraged by this revelation, he suggests they apply for an apartment from Myeongjin Construction, expressing optimism about their chances. However, his grandmother expresses concern about their financial ability to proceed even if they are selected. Hyun Sung confidently asserts that obtaining home loans has become easier nowadays, dismissing the idea of not taking advantage of such opportunities as foolish. He suggests they could sell their current villa or even offer shares in the property to cover any remaining costs. Surprised by Hyun Sung's knowledge about real estate, his grandmother inquires how he became so knowledgeable, but he deflects the question. Inwardly, Hyun-sung is confident that Go Changbyum will ensure his application is among the winners. He briefly considers providing his grandmother with 100 million won, similar to what he did for Jang Du-cheol, but dismisses the idea, knowing she would question the source of the money. Instead, he decides to proceed cautiously to avoid arousing suspicion. The next day at school, Shin compliments Jin-woo on completing his task, suggesting that Hyun-sung must be seething with anger. Jin-woo, wearing a skeptical expression, asks for more details, prompting Shin to share gossip he heard from freshmen. Shin then asks if he followed through on his directive to trample Hyun-sung, and praises him for executing the beating so effectively that Hyun-sung couldn't even speak afterward. Impressed by Jin-woo's actions, Shin extends an offer for Jin-woo to become his little brother and join him in activities after school. Oblivious to the danger, Jin-woo eagerly accepts, boasting about his accomplishments and offering further assistance in the future. He concludes that Jin-woo is pretty cool. Meanwhile, upon encountering Hyun-sung, Jin-woo is shocked to see his bruised face and assumes he was assaulted outside of school for his behavior. Convinced that Shin Young-min would blame him for the incident, Jin-woo questions Hyun-sung's strength, surmising that if he were truly formidable, he wouldn't have been so easily defeated. Determined to maintain his facade, Jin-woo resolves to continue crushing Hyun-sung and to prevent him from recovering. He issues a stern warning to all freshmen, instructing them to avoid any association with Kim Hyun-sung under threat of dire consequences. In his gym, Young Du-cheol advises Hyun-sung on the importance of physical fitness when working with one's body. He stresses that learning anything is futile if one's stamina depletes after just a few punches. Du-cheol sets a demanding standard, requiring Hyun-sung to endure 2 hours of rigorous training each day. He warns that if Hyun-sung's stamina falters, he won't continue teaching. Hyun-sung is depicted engaging in various activities to improve his stamina, determined to endure the training. He understands that to defeat someone like Shin Young-min, who has trained for years, he must surpass the training effortlessly, viewing Shin as just the initial challenge. To draw out the other members of the Golden Circle from hiding, he realizes he must defeat opponents even stronger than Shin Young-min. Observing Hyun-sung's exceptional endurance, Du-cheol recognizes his potential and contemplates introducing a special training regimen tailored to him. He sees Hyun-sung's ability to endure hellish training that pushes individuals beyond their limits as a sign of great promise. Reflecting on his own journey after being expelled from the ring, Young Du-cheol shares his commitment to achieving greatness without resorting to cheating. Despite no longer actively competing, he remains dedicated to helping his disciples shine in the ring. With this in mind, he announces his decision to integrate a special training method into his program going forward. This method has the potential to unlock unparalleled potential, surpassing that of anyone else, provided the trainee can maintain the necessary dedication and perseverance. 1 week later, Kim Si-woo, a freshman, approaches Hyun-sung, expressing his dismay at being abandoned despite having done nothing wrong. Si-woo reveals that he initially hesitated to approach Hyun-sung because he noticed a change in him, but he didn't want to participate in the isolation orchestrated by others. Hyun-sung, taken aback, inquiries about the isolation incident, to which Si-woo responds that Park Jae-woo is threatening anyone who associates with or gets close to Hyun-sung, warning them of dire consequences. Surprised by this revelation, Hyun-sung questions why Si-woo is there. Si-woo expresses disbelief at Hyun-sung's question, emphasizing the strength of their friendship, which spans over a decade. He vows to stand by Hyun-sung's side, even if it means facing physical harm. To Hyun-sung, Si-woo was his savior in a previous life, intervening when he was being bullied. However, Park Min-cheol redirected his aggression towards Si-woo, ultimately leading to Si-woo's injury. Feeling powerless and guilty for not protecting Hyun-sung, Si-woo distanced himself. However, upon learning of Hyun-sung's vegetative state, Si-woo visited him, apologizing for not standing up for him sooner and vowing to never abandon him again, even in another lifetime. Hyun-sung firmly grasped Si-woo's hand, urging him not to act superior and blend in with the others, insisting that he can handle his own problems. Despite Si-woo's attempts to highlight the seriousness of the situation, the bell interrupts their conversation. Saiwoo asks Hyun-sung to wait for him after class to continue their discussion, expressing his determination not to leave Hyun-sung alone. As they part ways, Saiwoo resolves to follow his own path and remain by Hyun-sung's side, regardless of Hyun-sung's resistance. Hyun-sung reflects on the challenges ahead, recognizing that the road to confronting the Golden Circle will be arduous and painful. He is determined to prevent anyone from interfering in his struggle, fearing that Saiwoo may suffer a fate similar to his in a past life. At the end of the class, Hyun-sung contemplates finding a way to distance himself from Saiwoo, yet he waits for him as promised. Outside, as heavy rain pours down, Hyun-sung begins to entertain thoughts of giving up. He ultimately decides that perhaps it's for the best to leave Saiwoo out of his troubles, concluding that convincing him would only bring more trouble. As two classmates discuss Saiwoo's situation, mentioning that Park Jae-woo has taken him somewhere, they advise against informing the teachers due to potential retaliation and urge others to mind their own business. Hearing a mention of Saiwoo being in danger of being killed, Hyun-sung's concern spikes, prompting him to start running. In a tense room filled with some students, Park Saiwoo confronts Kim Saiwoo, warning him about associating with Kim Hyun-sung despite his previous warnings. He questions Saiwoo's lack of fear and authority to dictate whom he can befriend. Saiwoo stands his ground, asserting that Hyun-sung is his friend and demanding to know the reason for the harassment. Fed up with Jaewoo's evasion, Saiwoo swiftly delivers a punch to his face, causing him to stagger backward into the wall. In a decisive move, Saiwoo commands the others present to join in punishing Jaewoo for his humiliation. As one of them moves to attack from behind, Saiwoo reacts swiftly with a kick to the face, and another assailant approaching from the right receives a swift punch. Despite taking a blow himself, Saiwoo remains resolute, contemplating Hyun-sung's potential anger and departure to avoid such conflicts. However, he refuses to ignore Hyun-sung's transformation, recognizing the changes in him, yet determined not to give up on their friendship. As Saiwoo prepares to strike, he's suddenly interrupted by one of the others. Before he can react, Jaewoo blocks his path, whispering a question about Saiwoo's knowledge of Taekwondo before delivering a punch to his face. Jaewoo criticizes people like Saiwoo who learn a skill and think they're superior. Saiwoo finds himself subjected to a barrage of kicks and punches from Jaewoo, while Jaewoo threatens to escalate the situation by pairing Saiwoo with Hyun-sung, intending to make their school lives miserable. The other students laugh as Jaewoo continues the assault, warning Saiwoo to brace himself for harassment during class, breaks, lunch, and even after school. The door slams open, and an enraged Hyun-sung storms into the room, catching Jaewoo off guard. Holding Saiwoo firmly, Jaewoo confronts Hyun-sung, questioning his presence. Hyun-sung sees Jaewoo as a potential target for future action, but seizing the moment, he calculates that Jaewoo's reliance on his weight and size makes him vulnerable to strategic attacks. Hyun-sung decides to provoke Jaewoo just enough to lure him into a one-on-one confrontation. Hyun-sung replies that he has something to say and challenges the rumors of Jaewoo's violence, mocking his dependence on size and strength. When Jaewoo tries to interrupt, Hyun-sung explains that his victory over Jaewoo was only possible with the help of others, baiting him for a solo showdown. As the others attempt to provoke Hyun-sung, Jaewoo asserts his dominance as the pack leader. Just as Hyun-sung envisioned, Jaewoo charges at him without thinking. His movements are big and will get bigger since he has his size due to which he is the leader of this pack. Hyun-sung swiftly lands a punch on his face and provokes him that this much is enough to knock him out and that it was a waste. He thinks that Park Jin-woo will get angry and try a takedown, believing his endurance against hits. But he learned how to deal with takedowns from his coach. Hyun-sung hits his torso like his coach hit him during his training sessions. He hits another blow to his face, making him fall back and stamps with his leg on the falling Jaewoo. Filled with rage, he thinks of engraving the feeling onto him so that he can never crawl his way back up. The others thinks that Hyun-sung is gone crazy and is going overboard. Jaewoo, with a trembling voice, asks him to stop and apologizes. Hyun-sung threatens to try talking shit again. He apologizes again and says that he is just following orders, and if not for them, he wouldn't have done anything in the first place. So, he asks him to stop and he promises not to do anything like this. Hyun-sung says that this is the final warning and not to lay a hand on Kim Saiwoo ever again. He kicks Jaiwoo hardly and threatens that if they repeat it again, he'd follow him to the end of the world, find and kill that person. In the clinic, Hyun-sung confronts Saiwoo, urging him to act as everyone does in their surroundings if he wishes to avoid further incidents like today. He interjects, revealing he observed Hyun-sung before losing consciousness. Saiwoo, relieved that Hyun-sung remains unchanged, expresses gratitude for his swift rescue and questions how he could disregard such a bond. Rejecting the notion of drawing lines between them, Saiwoo emphasizes their enduring friendship, pledging to intervene should danger arise again. However, Hyun-sung counters, saying that Saiwoo's altercation with Jinwoo wasn't a coincidence. Rather, it was intentional, and he wouldn't hesitate to escalate matters further. Asserting his resolve to dismantle the bullies at any cost, Hyun-sung cautions Saiwoo against involvement, citing his own unresolved trauma as a barrier to their friendship. Despite acknowledging their past camaraderie, Hyun-sung warns Saiwoo that the amiable persona he once embodied has vanished. As Hyun-sung exits, Saiwoo is left disheartened, grappling with the harsh reality, a reaction Hyun-sung desires to see for his own peace of mind. In his classroom, Shin Yongmin contemplates the doubled success reward soon to be distributed as interim payment and envisions how he'll spend the hefty sum. He marvels at the prospect of earning billions of won merely by intimidating a few students, pondering the possibility of demanding more commissions from the members of Golden Circle in the future. Meanwhile, murmurs ripple through the corridor as students gossip about the arrival of a freshman and talking about his attire. Shin entertains thoughts of similar commotions in other schools and envisions a future, imagining himself dipping into a gold mine of wealth and potentially ascending to the status of a Golden Circle broker after his graduation. His fantasies are abruptly interrupted by the furious creak of the door. Hyun-sung strides in, confronting Shin and demanding confirmation of his identity as the infamous Shin Yongmin. Startled, Shin questions the accusation and calling him a crazy bastard, only to be met with a string of curses and a failed attempt at an angry swift kick from Hyun-sung, which are blocked by him. As tension mounts, Hyun-sung assumes a fighting stance, prompting Shin to realize he's facing off against someone with formidable skills who has worked out previously. Despite recognizing familiar patterns in Hyun-sung's movements, Shin finds himself overpowered. Hyun-sung makes a feint, then delivers a forceful blow to Shin's torso, initiating a conversation in which Hyun-sung reveals his true identity as Kim Hyun-sung, the individual Shin has been seeking. He backs up, calling Shin a shitty bastard, and demands to know why he is there. Suddenly, Hyun-sung grabs a chair and tries to hit him. Shin blocks the attack but is forced back, retorting that Hyun-sung dares to hit him with a chair. Realizing he will lose the advantage if he doesn't act now, Hyun-sung throws the chair, which Shin dodges. Seizing the opportunity, Hyun-sung attempts to punch Shin, but Shin stops him by grabbing his fist. Shin screams that Hyun-sung is fucking dead now and feints a punch, only to hit Hyun-sung in the torso. He claims to know the tactics better than him. Despite the pain, Hyun-sung thinks he can bear it, especially compared to Young-do Cheol. From the start, he knew he was no match for Shin Yongmin. This fight was about proving himself. He had bet everything on this chance and never planned to come out unscathed. When he finds himself at a dead end, Hyun-sung quickly grabs Shin's leg and charges towards the window behind them. The window panes shatter, and as Shin barely catches himself. The classroom is likely on a second floor and Hyun-sung thought he could throw him from the window. He asks Hyun-sung what he wants. Hyun-sung replies that he wants to go all out no matter the outcome. A senior arrives on the scene and commands others to grab Hyun-sung off Shin. As he is being taken away, Hyun-sung screams to be let go and yells at Shin Yongmin, who is a fucking son of a bitch and this won't be the end of the incidents. Just because Shin laid hands on his friend, Hyun-sung vows it won't end until one of them dies. He tells Shin to prepare himself, as he will swing a chair at the back of Shin's head every chance he gets. He screams that Shin will eventually get shit this into his thick skull and warns him to watch out for what happens after he started to messes with him. His friend asks Yongmin if he is alright. He replies that he dominated the fight and about the reason behind his question. He apologies and he tells him to take a look of his backside, which was the reason. His backside is full of broken glass piercing him with blood all over. After 30 minutes, the announcement speaker is heard in the school, where it says that the students whose names were called should proceed to the principal's office.